The 2022 college football season is just around the corner as the SEC looks to capture its fourth consecutive national title. Last season, the Georgia Bulldogs defeated the Alabama Crimson Tide to claim its first national title since 1980. Regarding Mizzou, though, guys, they kick off their season at Faurot Field in exactly 1 week against Louisiana Tech. So, Ryan, we're just going to preview this really quickly. We'll talk about LA Tech more in thorough detail next week, obviously. So let's preview this season really quick. Just preview our season for us, please.
Yeah, the hype is real for the Missouri Tigers this year in 2022. After last year finishing 6-7, because considering the bowl game, but just an amazing win against Florida. That very last game was really awesome to watch. The 2-point conversion at the very last second was really cool. But this year, they have a lot more on their plate. They ended up getting 5-star running back Luca Bowden, which is going to be all of the buzz in Columbia this year. Obviously, he is a stud player, and he's going to be really nice at receiving the punt as well. He's not just going to be the wide receiver. He's probably going to be the person that's going to be returning those punts as well. As in his very first game, the All-American game, he returned a 65-yard touchdown on the first play of the game. So that was really crazy. He's going to be a stud to watch. Mookie Cooper, another one of those players that's going to be very exciting to watch. Trajan Jeffcoat, I think their defense is actually lined up to be pretty dang good in the SEC. I understand the SEC is a very tough division, but you got Trajan Jeffcoat, you got Martez Manuel, and then although we lost Tyler Beatty, although they lost Tyler Beatty, Nathaniel Pete has come in from, I believe that was Stanford, yep, and he's been phenomenal. So he'll be definitely exciting to watch. And, this team is going to be very exciting. And then obviously you have Brady Cook at quarterback, which will be exciting to see what he can do. Obviously he earned that. He played very well in the bowl game last year. And then obviously with Connor Bazelak leaving, Brady Cook is the next man up. But they also have Sam Horn and Tyler Macon, who could also really make some noise this year as well and potentially be behind behind the line of scrimmage eventually this year as well. So it'll be exciting to see what happens in Columbia. Obviously, Louisiana Tech, that game is very, very exciting as it's a Thursday night kickoff. And can't remember the last time Mizzou had a Thursday night kickoff.
I think it was 2015? 2015, okay.
2015. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be all the buzz. But, man, I'm so excited for Luther Bowden. That is basically all I have to say. I'm so excited that he came here. He's going to light up the scoreboard day in and day out. And, this Mizzou team, they're going to be a challenge, I think, in the SEC, of starting off very early here with the schedule.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think this year it's going to be about just taking another step forward. This isn't a team competing for a playoff spot, and it's not a team competing for an SEC championship game, if we're being realistic. But it's about taking a step forward. In the first 2 seasons under Drinkowitz, the head coach who was hired before the 2020 season, they've gone 500, which at least in the first year, I think was a success. Maybe last year wanted another win or two. But this year it's about, hey, can we get to 8-4, 7-5, stuff like that. I think you've got to take a step forward. I think Brady Cook's going to play a little bit longer than some people think, because I don't necessarily know if Sam Horn is really ready yet from what I have seen and heard. And Brady Cook, in the game he started in the bowl game against Army, the Armed Forces Bowl, played pretty much well enough to win. He had the 238 through the air with a touchdown, no picks. Yes, he made a bad throw in a late game situation that could have put the Tigers up 3, and then the field goal, or then I think they're tied instead of losing there at the end. Regardless, he played pretty well and is going to have a chance to get off to a strong start. I've seen some different people who think that by midseason this will be Sam Horn's team. I think Brady Cook is starting at least into November, as long as there's not an injury. I don't think Sam Horn is really ready yet. But also, I think they have to make it a focal point to get Luther Burden involved in the offense early. There was no real premier receiver for the Missouri Tigers last year. You can argue that one of their most talented, Mookie Cooper, only had 194 yards out of last year. I didn't go back and look, but I believe their leading receiver last year may have been the tight end in just terms of yards. So
I would have never actually guessed
they've got to get Luther Burden involved, especially as a senior when he averaged over 90 yards a game and 1,100 in total. So that's a man you have to get the ball in his hands. And also, can they get off to a strong start? Kansas State week 2 on the road, it could very easily, if they fall asleep sleep early, they could find themselves down 14 or 21 on something by the time it's 11:30 there, and they could lose that one on the road. So they've got to avoid a trap game there in Kansas State, and they've really got to get to 3-0 before they hit the tough SEC part of their schedule, because some of the games in Auburn, in Florida, home against Georgia, are not going to be easy. So if they want to have any chance of success, I really think they've got to start 3-0 before they get to the SEC schedule.
Okay, so I do not have them starting 3-0, just so you know. I had them going 2-1. I have them losing to K-State. But nevertheless, this team is a good program, but it needs to get good really fast, okay? In just the SEC East alone, Florida's about to rocket back up. You got Tennessee becoming pretty dangerous. South Carolina's having some momentum. Kentucky's pretty rock solid, as we saw last year, and Georgia just won the national championship. Okay. However, did you know ever since losing the 2014 SEC championship game to Alabama, Mizzou is mediocre, 42-43 as their record. Now, that is not going to be acceptable in the SEC. If you were in the Big Ten, we would be having a different conversation because this team would easily be the best in the Big Ten. So obviously you got Luther Burden, the 5-star wideout, which is a big addition to this team. You got Mookie Cooper, who is going to be healthy this year, so he should be a bigger addition to this team. You still got Towski Dove. You still got the running back situation is going to be interesting because you did lose Tyler Beatty, who I believe is going to be a very good running back in the NFL one day. So you got Nathaniel Payton, you got other running backs in that running room like Elijah Young. But when you're talking about this team, in my opinion, the offense has offensively, has totally fell off the map since 2015. The team went 4-8 in 2016, but it's been really hard for this team to bust out of this rut, and you can blame Barry Odom if you want, that's fine, but there was actually a time when Mizzou's offense was actually a differentiating factor, and the program was great at winning games when we were supposed to on the offensive side of the ball. It wasn't a defensive team like if you were to compare it NFL-wise to Chicago Bears in 2018. But there hasn't been a whole lot of big, splashy moments offensively. The defense against LSU a couple of years ago on the goal line, that was a good play, but that was defense. But when it comes to building off in this recruiting class, I think Drinkwitz did a very good job recruiting-wise. I mean, if it was Alabama, they would maybe want to jump off a cliff because it's not technically a good recruiting class for Alabama. But what I will say offensively is the Tigers should be better. I will say that let Brady cook, obviously. I think he's going to be a decent quarterback. I thought he was better than Connor Bazelak before last season even started, and I think that's going to be the same here. It's obviously unsettled, and I think depending on injuries, Ben, like you said, in play in general, if Brady Cook struggles, I guarantee you will see, in my opinion, Sam Horn start against Auburn. And if he does not struggle, I honestly, is Brady Cook, by the way, a junior or senior? I just want to make sure.
He's a junior.
He's a junior.
Yeah.
Okay. So if he's a junior and he doesn't struggle, and if Sam Horn is blowing everyone's minds in practice, I would start him in the Vanderbilt game. Get him some reps. That should be a win game against Vanderbilt. This isn't baseball. So in my opinion, that's when he should start. Obviously, Tyler Beatty's gone, but defensively, this defense last year was an absolute disaster under Steve Wilkes. I have never seen anything worse than their defense last year, particularly against the run. I mean, Ben, you and I could have been on that line of scrimmage, and we could have gotten easily 300 rushing yards. Okay? So, do they have the best defensive end tandem in the SEC right now? They do not. But they are better right now because you got Trajan Jeffcoat, you got Isaiah McGuire, two fantastic veterans who will get behind the line. And they also have that Florida transfer, Tyron Hopper. He's also very good, or Hooper, no, it is Hopper. And the secondary this year, unlike last year, they have the guys. They just need to be healthy. Chris Abrams-Drain, future NFL starter, in my opinion. He's going to own one of those corner jobs. And then Ennis Rakestraw, who was out all of last season. He'll be on the other side once he gets back from that knee injury. So you look at this complete secondary. You got, like Brian said, Martez Manuel. You also got Jalen Carlisle, who was the number 3 tackler last season on the Mizzou Tigers. You add all this together, and you're like, okay, that secondary isn't terrible. They should be better against the pass. The run is my question. Their offensive line is a question mark. Obviously, you got Javon Foster. You got some other younger guys. So it's just going to have to be chemistry and overtime.
Yeah, two things. One, I'm really excited to see what Chris Abrams-Drain does at the cornerback position because he's certainly a very good talent. I think one of the better cornerbacks that Missouri has had to come through the last couple of years. And that's saying something, too, because Caleb Evans last year put on a pretty good show and looks to be making an impact in the NFL essentially already in his rookie season with Minnesota. But I think Chris Abrams-Drain is an even better cornerback and could be raising his stock heading into the draft next year with another good season this year. So I think he plays well against what will be some tough SEC competition because you know how many of those teams have great wide receivers that'll be first-round picks next year. But on offense, I think I agree with you. You said it has a chance to be better. I think it has a chance to be more dynamic because certainly as it got to mid-season when Bazelak was nursing a bunch of different injuries, he was essentially just a sitting duck back there in the pocket. And I think Cook does offer some mobility.
Yes, he does.
Certainly does. And
so does Macon if you use him as a gadget player.
Yeah, and I think Cook can extend plays outside the pocket by time, and when you have a receiver like Luther Burden and even Mookie Cooper to an extent, I'm not going to say a ton about Mookie Cooper because I can't really talk up a guy that had less than 200 yards last year, but there's some talent there. But if Cook is extending the play by getting outside the pocket, those receivers are going to find their way open at some point. You can't stick with those guys for 7 or 8 seconds if Cook is buying time. So the offense, although it'll take a step back at the running back position going from Beatty to Pete, it has a chance to have some more mobility, really try and pound the rock with both the quarterback and the running back. And I think you mentioned going to take some time with chemistry, and if you can and try and do that early in the game against Louisiana Tech, it can set yourself up for success because you mentioned you have them losing to Kansas State. I think at the very least it's a close game. That's a game they can't afford to fall asleep early and try and dig themselves out of a hole. So they have to get things figured out pretty much in week 1 before they head on the road week 2.
Okay, I just found the running game, or the defense against the run last year. I didn't realize how bad I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize how bad it was. They allowed 5.32 yards a carry. 5.32. You cannot expect to win games if you're allowing 5 yards a carry. Think about this right now. Kentucky rushed for 341 yards. Tennessee rushed for 458 yards, which averages to 7.7 yards a carry. You might as well just allow them to just keep running. But this is the more, I would say, eye-popping, or if you want to say eye-gouging stat. Mizzou gave up over 200 rushing yards 7 times last year and 9 times in the last 15 games. They got to fix that. You're never going to win a conference game if you expect that. But nevertheless, before we end this segment, I do 4 downs. I do want to talk about the win totals because this is in my opinion, a make or break season for Eli Drinkwitz. I'm telling you right now, Dr. Francois, she ain't gonna put up with it. I'm telling you right now, you gotta have a winning program with this kind of recruiting. So, in my opinion, the Missouri Tigers will win 8 games this year.
I like that. I think 8's very good. My ceiling for them, like the highest they could go, I think is 9, but I think they're going to finish 8-4 as well.
What about the bowl game? They should. I think
8-4 and then a bowl game.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. But obviously, I think that's what a lot of people had. You guys can quote me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people had this team last year finishing 8-4, and they obviously didn't exceed expectations. So I think this year's a really good chance for them to actually exceed expectations, go 8-4 with a ceiling of 9-3. But before we move to Ben here, you guys forgot to talk about Tusky Dove and Kiki Chisholm. Tusky Dove obviously had the most yards for receiving last year, so he's obviously going to be another player that Brady Cook can also look to as well. Because here's the thing for me, Louisiana Tech going into that game, they're going to possibly double coverage Luther Bowden, and if they do that, then they're going to have to find other people. And Tusky Dove has a great opportunity this year to be another big player for this wide receiving crew. Also, this kind of shocked me, but Brady Cook's actually a sophomore.
He's a sophomore?
He's a sophomore. He was a redshirt freshman last year.
Okay.
So I agree with you, Luca. It is a very big year for Drinkwitz because he's established a great culture and had already made great strides in recruiting that just were not there before he got to the program. But none of that matters if you can't coach a football team. I think he can, but he is going to have to start showing up in the win column this season after back-to-back 500 seasons. One game under last year if you count the bowl game, but really back-to-back 500 seasons.
Exactly.
And I think there's improvement this year, but I don't think it's a very winnable schedule. Seems like a lot of these different places have their win total set at 5.5. I think they get to 7. I think they go 7-5.
Better than last year.
Yeah, it's a step up. I don't necessarily know what that would do for Drinkwitz if they go 7-5 or even 6-6. I think it would have to be examined, but it's a tough road for the Tigers for sure.
I'll tell you what, if they go 6-6, and that's excluding the bowl game, obviously, we got to have a serious conversation about Eli Drinkwitz because we understand that you can recruit. We got all that. We understand you can get some pretty good transfers. But at the end of the day, nobody cares unless you have the product on the field.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And I hope we don't have to have the conversation because it seems like he has made tremendous strides in a very short period of time. No one was expecting them to go 500 in that first season, and they surprised some people. So you would love for him to be the guy and for him to be here for years to come, but it's got to start turning up because it's a program that is expecting wins, a program that hasn't had a lot of wins in years now. So got to start getting the results and get in the win column.
How would you guys say the strength of the schedule is this year compared to last year? I know the SEC is always tough, but I mean, you add Louisiana Tech in there, Abilene Christian. Those are games that you should probably win. Then you have Vanderbilt, which usually we always play.
I think they'll beat South Carolina again.
Yeah.
Though, my biggest upset of the season, they'll beat Kentucky. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I guess do you have the number of how tough their schedule is compared to last year?
No, I do
not. Okay. I mean, off the top of my head, I would guess it's slightly easier, maybe because they get Georgia at home and it's a slightly worse Georgia team. But I think they could compete against Kentucky. They do get Kentucky at home. I don't think Auburn's a great team, but I don't think playing there on the road will be easy. Same with Florida as well. I don't think it went very well when they played in Florida in
Florida's
2020.
a toss-up game always, in my opinion.
So, I mean, there's a bunch of games in the schedule that I think I wouldn't be shocked if they win. I wouldn't be shocked if they lose. I could say that about Kansas State. I'd probably Florida, Auburn, Kentucky. Those are all games. Kentucky's not necessarily a toss-up, but I wouldn't be shocked if they pulled off an upset.
Well, they're ranked going into the season.
Yes, I believe that they're ranked 21st. I'm a big fan of Will Levis, their quarterback, Levis Levis. But it's an interesting schedule. Like I said, I don't know compared to last year exactly what it is. But just I would guess it's right around the same, maybe slightly easier. They don't play that random school in Texas that they played like week 3 last year and put up like 50 points on. They don't.
North Texas?
North Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.